Hi guys, this is Fernando doing another video for the Modern Survivalist. In this case I'm going to be continuing with a series of videos about relocating. In case you haven't seen the previous one, I'm no longer in Argentina. I left Argentina and I've been living for 2 months now in Northern Ireland. In our previous video, if you haven't seen it, we talked about when should you be leaving your country, when should you at least be considering leaving your country. The reasons for that: crime, religious and political persecution, war, economic problems, significant ones, and serious reduction of your standard of living, having a better option in some other country. Okay, if the entire standards of living go down everywhere, maybe you're not going to be making much of a good choice in leaving your country, because you're going to be seeing more of the same problem. So you cannot escape the global economic crisis just by moving from one place to another. So keep that in mind as well. The grass must be indeed much greener on the other side for you to make that decision based on reductions of standard of living, on reduction of freedom. And for people that tell me that USA has become a police state and there's no longer freedom and it's awful and it's pure socialism and they're going to be leaving, I always ask them exactly where is it that they're going to be going to, because wherever they're going to be going to, they're not going to be finding anywhere that it's as free as USA, in spite of the problems. So keep that in mind, guys. Keep that in mind, and maybe relocate within US to a different state that has more of the type of people that are like you, or that have your same mindset. So it's not an easy choice to make. I know, because I've just did it. I've just did exactly that. It's not easy to relocate, to leave everything behind, leave your country for good, and just take a suitcase with you as all your personal belongings. Not easy at all. So this video is going to be about where to go, right? Where are we going? Big question there. Mostly it's going to be a matter of where you have family members or friends that can help you out. It's not just about choosing any place you like. Hopefully we all wish we had that freedom of just choosing wherever it is we want to be going to. It's going to be about having a job there, if in case you're not independently wealthy and can live off your fortune. You will have to work. So think about that as well. Usually if you have friends or family to stay with until you find a job, that helps a lot. And that's usually one of the factors that people keep in mind. When my grandparents left Spain, they went to Argentina because they had family there. They had someone that could help them out. So as I mentioned in my blog and in my book as well several times, it's important to work with that network, with your family and your friends. You know, it's so important, because that's the type of people you're going to be relying on when something like this happens and you have to leave. If it ever comes to that, you're going to be grateful that you made that phone call that you've been postponing, talking with those family members you have abroad. So basically it comes down to, let's suppose for a second that you could just go anywhere, okay? And the reality is going to be different for each one of you, but for a second let's suppose that if you could just pick any place, where would you be going? And for me, the way I see it, it basically comes down to this: you have to choose between living in a first world country or a third world country. Alright, moving that a little bit down there. And the third world country has become extremely popular lately. Every blogger and author is writing a book about how cool it is to live in the third world country of whatever choice he's making, and how you live like a king there with a minimum wage income from US, and you have, you spend your entire day just staring at the ocean, sitting under a palm tree and working half an hour a day with your laptop. For me, that's pure bullshit, and it's just a way in which you sell a fantasy, an idea of a cool lifestyle that people don't really have. People that make lots of money usually work a lot, guys. Don't fool yourselves. It's usually because they work on something that they like, that it doesn't even feel like working, but nothing happens just because, and the selling coolness is one of the huge selling things it's one of the things in which people make money. People make money by selling you dieting products, by selling you pills, by selling you products to make your hair grow, by selling you fitness crap. And lately it's also about selling you the cool idea of, you read something, you're never going to be doing that, but you already feel good about it just because of reading that, or watching that, or buying that product, buying that, registering or signing up to that website that gives you all this feedback of cool international lifestyles. As someone that has been living his entire life in a third world country, I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt that it's mostly about selling a fantasy than what it's really like. Third world countries have lots of things in similar. I've talked with people in South Africa, I've talked with people in Mexico, people that live in poor Asian countries as well, Central America, South America. You know what? There's always the same things in common, and they're not good. The poverty, the economic problems, the social degradation you find in third world countries, it's not fun, and it's definitely not cool. So make sure you're making the right decision. Don't fall for the dream that you're going to be living like a king with a minimum wage income in a third world country. You're going to be living like another third world country citizen with a slightly better income and with lots of time in your hand to contemplate your stupid decision, guys. I just have to say it because it's the way it is. For me, it's about this. I'm not some idiot spending all my day under a palm tree. I have a wife and kids. I have to send them to school. I have to bring up my kids in a place where they have freedom of moving without being afraid of getting shot, getting kidnapped, getting robbed, without fearing when they grow older what's going to be of them next month, next week, because the country they're living in is so unstable that they cannot plan anything. That's what happens to you when you live in a place like Argentina. There's always something going to be happening. And folks, I'm not telling anything that the other 44 million people in Argentina don't know already. Argentina has been going through crisis since the 70s. It has had dictators, it has had economic collapses, hyperinflation. It's been happening, and you know what? It repeats itself in these third world countries that now these guys are taking advantage of and writing about and bullshitting people about from US and selling them the dream, the idea, or even sometimes the real estate in some of these countries as, get out of US because US is sinking and it's now this police state where there's no freedom anymore. So I'm sending you to this crappy place in South America where you're gonna be under the thumb of some other lunatic. Why not go to Venezuela? If you're gonna be making a stupid decision, go to Venezuela and live under the thumb of Chavez, who's gonna be expropriating your property and stealing your money, stealing your house or whatever it is you bought whenever he feels like. Go live in Cuba where you can live with pennies like a king as well, supposedly. Now, who's wanting to live that way? I don't get it. So, going back to what we're talking about, where to go. If you have a wife and kids, you have to make other considerations besides the fantasy and the cool factor of third world countries. Why didn't I stay in Argentina? For all these reasons that I'm mentioning right now. Right, so enough of that. Some people asked me in the comments about Chile. Why didn't I go to Chile? Chile is slightly better than Argentina. They're better off economically, socially. It's more stable as well, but it's not that better. All right, it is better indeed. If I had to choose between Chile and Argentina, I would choose Chile, no doubt. It is better, but they still have problems, social problems. There's still enough crime for me to choose otherwise, to choose a first world country instead. And there's also that little problem of Chile sinking under the Pacific all the time. So you have constant earthquakes in Chile. Sometimes they're worse than others, but as we've seen recently, it is a huge problem, and you cannot go to these places and not expect to have that sort of problem eventually again. So I just don't see myself in Chile at all. What about Uruguay? I've blogged about Uruguay. I've been to Uruguay as well as as I've been in Chile. Uruguay is nice. It's good. It would be my first option if I had to choose between any country in South America. I would choose Uruguay, definitely, because it's safe. It's small. There's not a lot of people in it. It's agricultural. There's lots of water in it. Great climate. It's like the banking haven of South America, like the Switzerland of South America in some way, you know, a third world version of Switzerland. It's a good place to be in. You cannot count too much on the government, of course, but it is less corrupt than Argentina as well. You're just across the Rio de la Plata from Buenos Aires, in case you want to go to Buenos Aires for one of the larger cities in the planet. You have Buenos Aires just across the river, which also that same river works as a natural barrier, so you're not that far away from it. You're just a couple of hours away from Buenos Aires in the ferry, but it's still far enough thanks to the river. Now, public hospitals will not be good. You're not going to be getting great health care. You have to pay for private schools as well, because the public ones will not be good. There's a strong socialism thing going on politically, and you know, that's also something that you don't like much. At least I don't like much. So again, and it's still a third world country, so that's why I didn't go for that. What I was looking for was first world countries, which is what some people take for granted. Some other very smart people take advantage of others taking it for granted and sell the idea of the cool international lifestyle. But again, first world countries. What was I considering? I was considering USA, of course. I was considering Europe. I was considering Australia, New Zealand. Basically, those were my options, because they are countries in which you have what some of you unfortunately take for granted and forgot about, or maybe you haven't lived in one of these crappy places where you know you get to appreciate what you have, guys, in these other countries. Now, why am I not in USA right now? Again, one of the questions that guys ask. Well, the reason for that is that I couldn't sort out my my visa for it. You know, I didn't have a good visa for it, and if I'm not doing things right, I'm not doing it. So basically, that's the problem. Getting into USA legally, it's much harder than people are led to believe, because of the amount of illegals that are there. Well, doing things legally and doing things as you're supposed to is really not that simple in US. You need lots of paperwork. You need lots of sponsorship. I did have lots of people that offered to help, but maybe they didn't understand completely what that involved, and you know, unfortunately, I tried for many years, folks. I really tried to end up in US, because I would love to be in US right now, but it wasn't something I could do. I spent already too many years trying to do it, and it didn't work out, so I decided to just move and keep doing it, keep trying to keep working for going to US eventually, but doing that from a safe, good country while I'm trying that. What I did have, thanks to my grandfather, was the Spanish citizenship. That gives me basically the right to live in any part of Europe. So I had that option. Australia, was good. Canada, again, good. And they have like very cold winters and such, but you have like better places if you look a little bit around. And they have actually a much better immigration law than US. If you're interested in Canada, In Canada, they have a better immigration law, but it was requiring, it could take like a year until they got back to you, and even then they could say no. So it was too much of a risk and too much time waiting for seeing if Canada took you or not. Still much better than US, where you didn't have much of an option. Australia, well, you need to get unemployment before getting there. You need to find yourself a job, and through that they give you the visa. I don't know anyone in Australia other than a couple of guys through email, but I didn't have a job to go here, and most of all, I didn't have the citizenship to go to Australia. So again, looking at my options, thanks to the European citizenship, I ended up looking in Europe. Now, I knew I wanted to speak the language where I was going to. I have my family in Spain, but Spain is doing very bad in terms of the economy. It's doing very, very bad. And besides the poor economic situation, the 40% unemployment among young people, the culture itself, I don't like it much. It's like too liberal, too many of the things that I don't like about it. So if another thing, if I wanted my kids to know English and Spanish, for example, in Spain, I would have to choose a place where there was a bilingual school, and those are very expensive in Spain as well. So I would have to pay a lot of money for having my kids know English and Spanish. I want my kids to be as fluent in English as I am, because I consider it a very valuable tool for them in the future. I want them to have that tool when they grow up. So, and even that, within Spain, there's places where they don't speak Spanish. I know that's pretty amazing for some of you guys to understand, but in Spain they don't speak Spanish in many places. In Barcelona, for example, they speak freaking Catalan, which I honestly don't understand. It's like you have a guy that's born and raised in Spain and they don't speak Spanish. What's that about? Basically, that left me with what are options. I had to choose I had to choose an English-speaking country within Europe. That basically leaves UK, Now, in UK, you have a few different options, because you can stay in England, in Scotland, or Northern Ireland. I also had Republic of Ireland. Republic of Ireland is having, again, a significant amount of economic problems of their own. It's also, a bit more expensive than Northern Ireland, so that's another factor. I looked for, what was I thinking of when I decided for Northern Ireland? The low population, a significant amount of water. It rains a lot here, but on the other hand, you have one of the basics of survival, which is water. It's much better than ending up in Salta, where it doesn't rain for to save your life. So it has the Lake Knock, which is the largest reservoir of water of all UK. So that was something important to keep in mind. It's a bit cheaper than the rest of UK. It's cheaper than Scotland and England and Wales. It's safer than Scotland, England and Wales as well. The education is better than Scotland, England and Wales as well. And so all these things are pretty important for me. Having that, knowing that it's safer, knowing that it's a bit cheaper, knowing that the education is good as well. Basically, that's what did it for me. Those factors are what made me decide to end up in Northern Ireland. So I'm very happy with the decision. It wasn't just something that we did lightly. We also researched a lot the disadvantages of living in this place, and that takes us, to the troubles. The troubles where the nationalists and the guys that want to be independent, that want to be part of Republic of Ireland, or want to be independent, and the ones that want to be part of, keep remaining part of England, the IRA and all that stuff. Now, that's basically something that ended with Good Friday, and in spite of that, there is a little bit of a problem yet. Every now and then there is something. Unfortunately, they put a bomb in some police officer's car, like it happened not that long ago, and it is a problem. But if I look at that from an objective point of view, I soon see that it's just very, very rarely that these things happen. As tragic as it is, if a police officer gets murdered by people in, a police officer getting murdered in Northern Ireland, it's maybe one. And if I compare that to the amount of daily murders in Argentina, and specifically in Buenos Aires, it's much, much safer. And again, something of consideration: what type of a crime is going on? What type of problem? Who's getting targeted? Are you among that group? If I tell you that Chicago has the same, if Chicago has the same amount of people murdered than Buenos Aires, you may think, okay, what's the problem then? It's just as bad as Chicago. Well, you have to take a bit of a closer look. What kind of people are getting murdered in U.S. and what kind of people are getting murdered in South America? Is it people that get shot and killed during robberies? Is it just gang members shooting each other? Are you a gang member? Then maybe you don't want to be here. You, as a gang member, if I was gonna be dedicating myself to criminal activities and gang and crap like that, I wouldn't have been in Argentina, because there's less than 1%, officially speaking, folks. This isn't just me talking. Officially speaking, there's like 0.001 chances of getting caught if you're a criminal in Argentina. Okay? Even if you get caught, there's not enough places in prison. They always try to cut you loose in any way they can, because that's also the political stance as well. It's always the middle class to blame, and the criminals are always to run free. Now, I understand that's a global problem, but it's much worse in places like Argentina, where they just leave murderers walk free. It's not that likely to happen in other places. So, those are all things you have to take a look at. After following the local news for several months, we decided that Northern Ireland was indeed much safer than Argentina, was even safer than Scotland and England, and that's what made us decide to end up here. So let's write all that down for you to keep in mind for whatever consideration you're having. Now, the criteria of the place you're going, the geographic location. Where are you placing yourself in the map, in case you have to move around a bit? Now, if you're fearing a thermonuclear war between the powers of the northern hemisphere, move here, move to Ushuaia, and wait for the end of the world here. Just sit here, staring to the north, and waiting for those atomic bombs to blow up. Now, if you're not that afraid of nuclear bombs, you may want to place yourself somewhere where you are closer to other nations that matter. Okay, Australia had that disadvantage. I was pretty much far away from my parents in Spain, from work in US when I traveled for some conference or for some the expos and stuff. That was pretty far away. Yeah, even if I go this way, it's still, it's one hell of a trip to go to Australia. So, if I if I wrap this around a bit, all right, it's still far. So, geographically, you're locating yourself in a place. If you choose here, being here was a good option in general terms. Was just a few hours away of most places of interest. What about climate? Climate is important. What's some of the most important factors of the climate? You need H2O, you need water. So deserts, generally speaking, are a very, very bad idea. Avoid deserts because you do need water. It's essential. And one other thing, the temperatures. How much do they drop? Canada that has the disadvantage of having very cold winters, same in some of places of the northern US where it drops like 10-20 degrees below zero. I'd prefer to avoid those extreme temperatures. I've been here in Northern Ireland and it hasn't been below zero since I arrived, and I take it that I understand it's one of the hottest winters ever, because it's been like 10-12 degrees, which is kind of insane, but that's something to keep in mind as well. The economy. How bad is it in terms of the global context? There's not much places where people are completely protected and sheltered from the economic global crisis, but some places are better off than others. The pigs are to be avoided in Europe. Spain, Italy, Portugal, places you don't want to be in. Same with some of the cities in US that have been hit the hardest. Take a look at the unemployment rates. What else do we have? Language. Can you speak it? And for your kids, will they be in a disadvantage if you move to some place where, if I move to Catalonia, and it's the only place, it's a city with its own language, and it's not spoken anywhere else, that's kind of stupid. And I'm going to be contaminating my kids with that stupidity, because their first language is going to be a language that isn't spoken anywhere else other than that city and that little province. And besides that, can you speak the local language? For those of you that ended up in South America, you know what I mean. If you don't speak the local language, you're pretty much serious trouble to be in one of these places and not know the local language. Cultural and social factors. Sometimes going from the Western world to places in Africa and in Eastern Europe or in Asia, it's a bit of a cultural shock. How similar is your culture to the one of the location you're choosing? Now, Latin culture is very different from the typical English type of culture. Now the thing is, we were a bit more international type of people ourselves, because we had lived, I had lived in Boston a while and traveled frequently to US, and it had a bit of a different perspective of the world than a typical Argentine citizen or a typical South American citizen. I'm not dancing salsa all freaking day. I'm not dancing tango. Football isn't my life, so I can actually live without going every Sunday to watch Boca or River play. For some people, they cannot leave their country because their cultural thing is too strong for them. And some people actually say that, I cannot live without that. Education. Can you afford the private education needed in some places, or is the public education good enough? For me, in Northern Ireland, that was one of the biggest points it had going for it. Education here is great. It's great because it's a great academic level. They have lots of extracurricular activities going on as well. They have religion. They are taught, Christianity. You have either the public schools, which are a bit more like Protestant, and you have the Catholic schools that are of course Catholic. But anyway, it's going to be something that involves Christianity. And my kid is going to a public school where he's being taught a little bit about Jesus every day. After class they have a few minutes, and they talk about religion, and I consider that to be, I like that a lot. I like that, and I like the fact that it's not something that it's unapproved of, which that would be a problem in US, where they even ban Christmas, for crying out loud. They use like that. They put like that instead of saying Christmas, saying Happy Holidays or Happy Xmas, which I want to puke every time I see it. Here, the word Christ isn't like taboo or anything. It's actually pretty important, and you notice it. I like those values. Now, for someone, I don't know, if you're a Muslim and that's a problem for you, then that's something that you may be considering. Or if you don't like religion, or if you don't like Christianity, that's something you should be considering and keeping in mind, because that would be a disadvantage for you. Now, if not, that's an advantage. And finally, a point about cultural and social integration, which could be related to that as well, of course. What I'm talking about here, I like being in a place that's friendly and where I can, get along with people well. People from Ireland in general have that, are famous for that, for being very friendly, pretty open. And it's been that way indeed, and that's great. That's something that helps a lot when you're moving to a new place. So you have to do your research pretty well, know very well where you're going to. Google Maps, it's a very valuable tool. You have like the map here, and you have like this plus and minus, and somewhere you have this little yellow guy which I keep mentioning. This little yellow guy, you just click and drag and you drop it in the map, and it suddenly turns into like a pedestrian point of view, and you see like the street and the cars and the sidewalk, and you can move all around like 360 degrees. That's a great tool for learning and understanding the different neighborhoods. You get to know what your neighborhood looks like before even going there, before even taking a look. Yeah, great resource to use. So guys, this is basically it for now. I'm gonna be talking a little bit more about relocating in following videos, so keep checking them out. I'm gonna be doing more videos on relocating. Take care and have a good day. Bye bye.